Well, I actually was in Midtown where I work when I heard it, so my first reaction, other than obviously being really shocked and upset that something like this would happen again in the US, was, is New York next?
I'm pretty horrified, and it was one of shock. I didn't really understand the magnitude of it until I watched the news unfold. And at first it seemed like an isolated, smaller incident, and then you realize it really was devastating and killed people and wounded hundreds of people. So yeah, it's kind of a slow burn reaction.
I was in shock. We were all really surprised. We were sitting in class, and one of the girls yelled out that there was a bombing in Boston, and we were all just in complete shock that something like that could happen.
Oh, in New York, I wasn't really privy to that. I mean, I know that it was in Times Square, and I worked on a 14 seat. I didn't see too much excess police presence, but I know it was there. I watched the news, but I thought it was effective, especially since we knew these guys were on their way down here.
It's obviously a little bit of a deterrent for people to see that, so I feel like that's a positive thing because it will discourage people like the two bombers from coming up with a plan if there is increased security.
At some point maybe there's going to be a drone type technological instrumentation that can detect that kind of thing from a distance. That might be a good thing. If they could develop technology that could really just swoop in and say, hey, there's an explosive device, there's something that, somehow they can designate that technologically, I think that would be a great thing to deploy over events, because this type of thing changes the way we all feel about public gathering, whether it's a rock concert, the ball at Times Square, you're going into a crowded train on a particularly, an auspicious occasion like the 4th of July or anniversary of September 11th, or a ball game like that, or a sporting event. I think people are now, or movie theaters, like some of the local just gun massacres. People are second guessing being in public places, I think, which is sad reality.
I think we're doing all the right things. I think that we need to find out where this kid's head was by doing everything legally, but certainly getting all the information and getting better communication. Certainly I think the country's done a really good job since 9/11 on keeping this kind of stuff at bay.
I think it was insane because I did see a picture of the bomber placing the backpack directly behind the little boy and his mom. So it's almost cruel because he knew this little boy was going to die, and I just think it's inhumane.
It's the most tragic representation of this whole event. It makes me, as a parent of 2 young children, it makes me sick to my stomach, and I can't think about it for too long. Stories like that affect the death or maiming of children just are heartbreaking to me. So I feel mortified by it. It makes me angry that 2 young men, one teenager and a young man, took it upon themselves to inflict that kind of pain, agony, maiming, and death on them, that family, and all the other people affected.
I feel like the whole scenario is so heartbreaking, but when you personalize a story, it really brings it home for people. We all know someone young in our family, and to see the loss of life at such a young age, it just makes it such a personal thing, so much more than a vague scenario. Like, we know about the bombing, but when you hear about a child losing their life in a bombing like that, it makes you think it can happen to anyone.
I found out about that hours afterwards, about the kid who got killed and his going to greet his father at the finish line. I think that was the most heartfelt thing about the whole situation. Is it's a day of celebration. It's a day of it's a momentous day for most people. And that was a complete other tragedy. The loss of a young life. There's nothing even close. So no, I felt horrendous, and I still feel it. Oh, 100%. I think there's nothing worse. Like I said a minute ago, nothing worse than the loss of a young life. I mean, so much hope, so much future snuffed out. I think it's horrible.
I definitely think that it makes us feel enraged that someone so helpless, that didn't have a chance to run away or couldn't possibly have the power to run away, was struck down. You always want to protect the innocent, and there's no one more innocent than the child. So.
Are feeling more sympathy to it. I don't know the broad spectrum of how people are relating to different stories, but absolutely, yeah. I think the same thing with Newton, and the fact that it was all children makes it 10 times as bad. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I do know why, but loss of life isn't good to anyone, but when you see innocent children being the victims of that type of an act, then it just makes it twice as heinous and heartbreaking.
I think definitely. I think people are more sympathetic towards children, especially because, like, he was really young. I think he was 8 years old, and it's like he didn't even get to live like half his life. He didn't get to do half the things all of us take for granted. So I think it's really, it like hits home for a lot of people when a child is hurt by something like this.